Hi everyone, and thank you for attending my talk. So I'm gonna focus on automated machine learning, which is a certain type of machine learning that we build at DataRobot. Okay, great. So just before I start, a quick word about myself. So I'm the chief data scientist in Europe, Middle East, and Africa for DataRobot. I joined the company around 3 years ago. By training, I'm a mathematician and computer scientist. And I now lead a team of 15 data scientists working with our customers, helping them build machine learning products into their application or into their businesses. So before that, I was working in financial services and in research in machine learning, so in various banks in France as well as in Singapore. And now I'm based in London, but I'm obviously not English, I'm French. Sorry about that. Okay, so I actually focus first on the use cases for machine learning in FinTech and financial services in general. Then I talk about why machine learning is, and the adoption of it is a challenge in a lot of businesses in FinTech and in financial services and insurance. Then I'd finish by talking about automation for machine learning and why it can actually bring value to build pervasive systems like using machine learning that can actually bring a lot of value to revolutionize the way financial services work. So let me tell you a story. This is a story about my grandmother. So her name is Germaine. So the reason why I talk about her, she was a great woman. So she was living in the southwest of France, and a few years after she passed away, so I went to her house in southwest of France. It's a family house now. And when I checked the mailbox, I realized that there was a lot of letters. So you probably are wondering, okay, is it are those letters from friends or family? Actually, it was not. So most of those letters were kind of advertising, usually advertising targeted to my grandmother, who actually passed away 5 or 6 years before. So you see the issue here. The main idea is that it doesn't make sense for any company to send this kind of advertising, especially when someone is not with us anymore. And you see that all the time, whether it's via emails. Probably sounds familiar to have a lot of junk emails, giving you some offers on products you're not even interested in. And why do I talk about this? It's because there are actually a lot of ways companies could capture information that would tell them and indicate that they don't need to send this advertising, or they should send more targeted offers and products. So they could have identified that my grandmother, Germaine, was actually passed away a few years before by using probably some public data sources. They could have noticed that she doesn't respond via other communication channels, and there was no activity for years on her accounts. So this is the kind of things where you can actually capture the fact that some advertising you're sending is not relevant for the customer. So a lot of those use cases actually could potentially be good use cases for machine learning. So for example, if you capture some public data sources about local death, potentially you could do some fuzzy matching with your customers and now understand and stop wasting your money and time on advertising to people who are not alive anymore. Probably you can actually do some prediction of whether the customer is likely to respond or not to some offers that you send to them. Or you can also predict customer dormancy, which are all use cases where she could have been identified as someone who would not be likely to respond, and probably all those mails could have been avoided. So there are so many ways to capture this information, and machine learning actually is a way where companies can potentially analyze all of this data, put it together, and then bring actual business insights that could be used to actually get more targeted offer. So today, machine learning is used as a transformative way for companies to analyze vast amounts of data. So machine learning and automated decisions in general based on data are reshaping the way businesses operate and interact with their customers. So you could use machine learning to automate some processes that would usually require some human judgment, like understanding which transactions are frauds, whether specific customers or applications are compliant, to do some cash management automatically. You could use machine learning to screen candidates if you're recruiting, or you could use machine learning to actually optimize your customer interactions based on the profile of the customer, or you could use machine learning to efficiently measure the risk that you are taking when you're underwriting a loan, for example, or a credit line. So there has been a lot of hype in the recent years about machine learning and AI in general. You're probably familiar with this guy, Masayoshi Son, who is the CEO of SoftBank. They invest massively in a lot of AI companies. He said around 2 years ago, those who rule data will rule the entire world. And if we look at actually various businesses evolving, now more and more businesses that are highly disruptive also use a lot of machine learning and invest a lot in this area. So Gartner last year said that AI and machine learning would generate $2.9 trillion in business value, and businesses using machine learning would recover 6.2 billion hours of worker productivity by 2021, so within 3 years. So how is actually machine learning used in financial services? So machine learning is transformative. There are actually plenty of applications for financial technologies. So let me tell you about some of them that I've seen with our clients, and then we'll talk about machine learning automation. So first, I'll start with demystifying some of the buzzwords. So everyone talks about AI. AI is actually a very large field that considers any system that would be able to perform tasks that typically required human intelligence or human judgment to be performed. Machine learning, data science is the ability or the field where individuals would actually build systems that can benefit from data and generate insight out of the data automatically, potentially. There is a big overlap between data science and artificial intelligence, and most of it is related to machine learning. So machine learning is about building systems that can learn from the past and from historical data in order to predict future outcomes. So in most cases, for example, standard use case in machine learning would be fraud detection, where you actually give historical examples of transactions to a machine learning system. You tell the system which ones were identified as fraud or not, and then you can actually, the machine learning will capture the patterns in this data to help you identify frauds in future observations, so in that case, in future transactions. Statistical modeling is heavily used in some machine learning techniques, but not only. There are other computer science techniques that are being used in machine learning. It's all about, machine learning is much more agnostic, and it's all about learning from data. You've probably heard of deep learning. Deep learning is actually a more recent field, area of study in machine learning, focused on optimizing neural networks. That's a specific type of algorithm in machine learning that are typically very good at analyzing data like images or text or audio or this kind of unstructured data. So the value of artificial intelligence today in the enterprise. So a lot of systems have been built over the past 30 years, way before machine learning was used. And so there is some value in actually just creating some automated system based on mainly human rules or judgment that have been embedded into those systems. So there is some value that has been there. And today, if you look at actually the value generated by AI systems, it's not necessarily from this boring stuff, but it's a lot related to machine learning and deep learning. Deep learning is still narrow today, so you don't have that many applications, but you have very promising applications in fields like, as I said, image recognition or understanding from text. But you don't necessarily need to use deep learning for those types of systems. So in financial services, if you look at, that's a map of use cases that describes kind of the various areas where it can be used. So whether you're a financial technology company just focusing on just lending or payments, or other types of financial services, or whether you're a bank, or whether you're in insurance, underwriting some specific policies. So those are use cases that you find in all of those areas. So first of all, revenue generation. Machine learning is used a lot in marketing and in prospecting. So if you want to acquire new customers, or if you want to target customers with the right offer, machine learning is heavily used today. Optimizing customer journey. So for your existing customers, how do you actually provide them with the right offer at the right time? How do you ensure that you optimize their loyalty? How do you reduce and you prevent them from leaving to your competition? How to provide a customized price for every individual client. All of those fall under machine learning as well. In compliance, especially for challenger banks or payment platforms, there are a lot of compliance processes around KYC and anti-money laundering that you need to comply with. So for those kind of use cases as well, machine learning is heavily used in order to identify potentially where suspicious activities could arise. If you want to actually also forecast the loss that you have when you underwrite some loans. Risk and fraud. So fraud reduction is probably one of the most common use cases for us in financial technology. a lot of lenders and payment platform use machine learning to identify like fraudulent cases among like credit applications, mortgage applications, or like within payments and transactions. For credit in particular, there are a lot of use cases where you can also use machine learning. So you can potentially like predict the risk that you're having when you underwrite a credit, whether the credit will be prepaid, because that's obviously business that you lose. In operations, like reviewing the loans, underwriting the loans, so like fast-tracking the loan applications, those systems also need to heavily rely on data as well. And then if you want to potentially build some tailored services or products that are customized for some clients to make them more efficient, we can also use machine learning to do this customization. So whether you're looking at like investment platforms, if you want to build a robo-advisor or some training strategies that are based on data and machine learning and basically making decisions automatically, or if you're doing some client targeting, so that's also areas where you can use machine learning. So if you drill down the key use cases by key areas of financial technology, so digital lending platforms heavily rely today on machine learning, unlike the traditional banks that usually build credit risk models based on quite traditional statistical techniques. More and more FinTech, especially in the unsecured loan areas, are using machine learning to very accurately predict lending risk, also to detect application fraud for those credit lines, recommend the right product for the right customers if you have a set of product lines, or target the customers in order to acquire them into your business with tailored messages. Payment platforms, so another type of fraud here is transaction fraud, is also very important. Anti-money laundering, so I've talked about it, like identifying the cases, like whether it's during the customer onboarding or when the transaction is monitored, that are related to anti-money laundering, so that's important from a regulatory perspective, but also for like your brand, if you have money laundering happening on your books, it might actually go public and it would deteriorate your image. You can recommend like products like crypto investments or crypto payments, for example, that could be tailored for someone. We work a lot with insurance, especially in Europe. It's a very fragmented market, and there are more and more insurtech that are disrupting the area of like standard like PNC, standard like non-life insurance and also life insurance. For example, like today, if you want to have like be underwritten a contract for life insurance or business insurance with a large insurer, it would typically take a few days just because there are a lot of manual reviews into the process. But there are insurtech companies who are like actually automating a lot of parts of this process by using more and more data, whether it's third-party data they use or the data they have captured about their customers. Dynamic pricing, so tailoring the price that you give for an insurance product to a particular customer, and other ones as well if you want to optimize your renewals. Challenger banks, so you have like, in challenger banks is basically, they try to provide all the business lines of products of like traditional banks. So the same way here, you have marketing use cases related to targeting them with new offer or tailored messages that could bring them on board. Again, anti-money laundering is very important. Understanding credit risk for new credit lines that you would underwrite. Also transaction frauds and robo-advisors for investments. So it's very often like whatever the area of financial technology, you have like very common themes around like credit risk, around like fraud, like compliance, and anti-money laundering or marketing that are like, that also carry a lot of business value. But in order to build all of those models, you need to actually capture the right data about your customers, and then you need to build and maintain those systems, which can be a very extensive process. So to summarize, there are three pillars of the value of machine learning in financial technology. First of all, customize financial products to clients. So it's like the customization is very important here. So sending the same advertising like via paper to all of your potential prospects or clients is not an efficient way, and you probably lose their interest. They'll be overloaded with mails. The idea is to improve their like the products that they take from you, as well as the way you target them based on their profile. More and more financial technology companies also provide services that typically customers, individuals would not get access to with traditional banks. So in particular thinking about lending. The peer-to-peer lending platform, as well as the unsecured lending platform, could provide some funding for some activities that would typically not go through the standard system. Also, operational efficiency in general, so optimizing the customer support and the touch points with the customer, optimizing the fraud detection systems to actually make the entire processes more efficient, as well as optimizing the compliance processes. All of those can potentially leverage machine learning. So in terms of recent stories, you have actually, I think it was a few days ago, Revolut, they released an article related to how they use machine learning to protect their customers from fraud. Having an efficient fraud system is very important for customer experience and brand recognition. And as you can see, actually, they listed a few of the use cases that data science teams are working on. Most of those systems are actually heavily relying on machine learning. SoFi, which is a funding platform for students and in the US, providing loans for low-risk individuals. They also released an article a month ago talking about how they can use machine learning to funnel their activities to borrowers that typically don't have access to this kind of services. Aptus, which is a platform and a software, it's a FinTech optimizing the quote-to-sale process. They use machine learning heavily within their product to take a business advantage compared to the standard software used for sales. So the problem is that machine learning by itself has a big issue, which is, I define it here as scalability. So just a quick survey among the room. So who has ever been involved in a project involving building and deploying machine learning models? Only two? Not more people than that? Okay. And have you ever deployed a model? Okay. So actually, one main issue is that when I look at potential applications of machine learning in financial technology, there are a lot of companies who use machine learning now as a proof of concept, and they don't necessarily deploy the systems that they build. So that actually stems from a lot of different issues and bottlenecks within the machine learning lifecycle that triggers the fact that machine learning today, as it stands, and the way it is built and deployed is not scalable. So recent stories, Monzo, about a year ago, said they had an article about the way they do machine learning, and they stated it was one of the first sentences that when it comes to data science, they have a lot of ideas of applying machine learning everywhere in their business for use cases that could bring a lot of value. A lot of promising business applications, but it's prohibitively time-consuming to test all of those solutions, especially to gather data and then build the models and maintain them, especially when you are only a few data scientists. Usually you never have 20 or 30 data scientists unless you are companies like Google or Facebook. So that's representative of an issue we see in a lot of financial technology companies we work with. So that's the curse of machine learning scalability. A lot of AI projects fail. You have more and more articles talking about that. There is a lot of buzz around AI and machine learning, but actually 80% of data science projects never go to production. That's kind of a random number. It's not 79, it's not 81, it's 80%. A lot of people, the first time I talk to them, they tell me, well, we only build prototypes right now. We have never deployed anything. So if you don't deploy anything, it means you don't actually bring business value. So if you go back to how you build a machine learning system, first you have to start from a business problem. You have to discover problems where machine learning could potentially be useful and where data-driven decisions could be made automatically. So it's an iterative workflow where you start from the problem, and then you have to gather some data that could be used for this particular problem. From this data, you have to develop models that learn from this data, the outcomes, that could potentially make predictions or decisions out of future observations of the data. Then you have to socialize the models with whatever business line you work with. And then you have to operationalize the models into IT systems. So this workflow, it's not sequential, it's actually iterative. Every time you go to the next step, you have to reevaluate whether you have to go back into the process and change, for example, the way you have defined the problem or the data sources you're using for the problem. So this iterative workflow, on paper, it looks quite simple, but there are a lot of bottlenecks. So one issue first is that data scientists are hard to find. hard to hire. The data scientists who build machine learning systems, so you've probably already seen this Venn diagram like 20 times, saying that machine learning is a combination of domain expertise, and I emphasize domain expertise is very important, math and statistical knowledge of how to actually build algorithm and machine learning systems, and programming, to implement the system, manipulate the data, etc. So it's a lot of skills that are required, and they are not that easy to find. So there are so many things that could go wrong into this machine learning process. So first, whether it's the problem discovery or socializing your results to the business, this requires a lot of heavy interaction with the business lines. If you're a team of like 3-4 data scientists, you don't necessarily interact a lot with the business line in an efficient way. So there are a lot of siloed data science teams who don't deliver. Second issue, data preparation. Actually finding the right data and preparing it for machine learning can take a lot of time. It can be very time consuming because you have to put the data into the right shape for the algorithms. Third issue, developing the models and operationalizing them requires expert data scientists, engineers, and they can be hard. Those processes can be really hard in some cases. It can also be hard to find the right skill sets to actually be able to build this. So if you look at today the demand in all sectors, in particular in financial technologies, banks, insurance, the demand for machine learning and AI algorithms keeps increasing at an exponential rate. And I think we're just in the beginning of this. But experts and data scientists are quite hard to find, hard to retain. And that's because machine learning is a long and complicated process. So the answer that we propose is to actually leverage automation as part of the machine learning process. That's what we call automated machine learning. So automated machine learning, I believe, will be actually one of the main drivers to improve the scalability of applying machine learning and AI within the financial technology sector. So why is that? So what is automated machine learning? First, this is the idea of taking all the steps in the workflow of building and deploying a model and maintaining it in production, and automate as many steps as possible into this process. So there are plenty of things that a data scientist does that are very repetitive and potentially could be automated if you include enough cutting-edge technologies as well as best practices. So there is a platform called Kaggle where there are plenty of very talented data scientists. They all work in different sectors, a lot of them in financial services, actually. So the idea is that our company, DataRobot, has built a machine learning system that allows to first we take the best practices and knowledge of some top-ranked and talented data scientists. They embed that into a platform, combined with some open source technologies that some of them have been released very recently, TensorFlow was released around 2 or 3 years ago by Google, and there are some other technologies released by Microsoft and Amazon all the time about what they do with machine learning. And those open source technologies have to be leveraged because today, this is the state of the art. So the idea of automation machine learning is to accelerate the process of testing, deploying machine learning models by using automation, and then it can enable a wider set of users to actually leverage these kind of techniques. It's kind of like data science democratization. So the idea is that most of the steps that can be automated are not related to domain expertise. So this is mostly the programming part, as well as the mathematical and statistical knowledge that could potentially be automated if you include the right best practices into your models, into your process and into the automation. So the domain expertise remains highly important because this is not something that a machine will never be able to automate, at least not in the next 4 to 5 years, I would say. So it's very important to actually, by leveraging automation, to recenter the process of building models closer to the business and more focused on domain expertise. So how does automation improve the process? So I've described 3 challenges and 3 bottlenecks in building machine learning systems. The first one, the fact that it requires a lot of domain expertise. So if you actually use automated machine learning, potentially there could be more business-oriented users who could leverage the automation and build these kind of systems as well alongside the data scientists. So if the business users are more involved into the process, it means that the interaction with the business is easier. So it makes the first step as well as the 4th step in the process easier. Secondly, Data preparation, as I said, can be very time-consuming, so putting the data into the right shape. So automation can make some parts of the data preparation more streamlined and automated. It allows the entire process to be more iterative. As I said, this process of building models is very iterative. But if you make some of the steps highly efficient, like developing the model or socializing the model, then you can potentially go back to the data more quickly, get more business input into it. Eventually, it makes the data preparation more focused on the actual business value. Model development and deployment require data scientists or data engineer. It can be hard to find. Those are experts. So automation allows to simplify the life cycle of the machine learning life cycle in general, in particular some of the technical steps. So it makes it more accessible to a wider range of people. So potentially, you don't need to have only the experts and experienced one. So automation helps addressing the skills challenge related to machine learning. So how do we do that? First of all, automation can make data scientists more productive and closer to the business, so they are eventually more efficient in building those systems. Secondly, you can actually enable a wider range of users, especially business analysts, the capable ones, to actually use machine learning techniques by themselves, especially for the easier problems. And then you can simplify your entire machine learning process, so it goes from a very complicated and long process to a process that's much faster, where actually the business gets results much more quickly. So we believe that with automation, the skill gap that you currently have in the AI space will be addressed at least partly. So if you think about the future of financial technology, actually if you think just about for example, a lending platform or a challenger bank, during the entire customer lifecycle, all the use case, all the orange parts here are parts where you can potentially leverage machine learning, either to make the process more efficient or to make the process fully automated. So it's both gains in terms of time during the customer life cycle, but also customer experience. So first of all, before the customer when a prospect becomes a customer, you can target them using machine learning with the right product at the right time. So it allows you to actually improve your customer acquisition process. Secondly, once a particular customer starts using your product, you can actually interact with them in a much more customized way. So you can give them some fair prices that you know they would accept on some products. So we call that price optimization. You can yield some tailored messaging, depending on their profile and depending on their history. You can improve the registration process in a lot of different products. So for example, if they have a deposit account and let's say they want to have a credit, potentially having a credit needs you to actually measure the risk and then underwrite this credit. This can be much faster if you actually highly leverage the data that you have available. So risk management, having a fairer assessment of the risk just based on the data that you have available and your knowledge about the customer can be highly optimized using machine learning. And sometimes for every single product, you would require one machine learning model, so one system by itself. Compliance, in particular, the processes related to anti-money laundering compliance and the KYC processes can be highly optimized with machine learning. So that's other use cases you need to build. Then once the customer accesses your websites and other products, potentially if they start using your product, they might actually reach out to the customer service because they have an issue. So customer services could also be optimized using machine learning. So you could potentially, if they reach out to you with a first message, analyze this message and directly understand which team they would need to address their problem automatically. And that's potentially using machine learning that you can do that. So it makes the entire customer service process much more efficient without requiring human intervention. So it allows you to be more scalable. Then you can also propose more tailored products, do some cross-sell, personalize the offers, and recommend them some new cryptocurrencies they might be interested in based on what they have purchased in the past. Then if they want to invest their money, potentially you can actually provide to them some trading strategies that are automated, personalized the robo-advisor, and kind of the risk they would be taking based on machine learning decisions, and basically recommend some potential actions in their investments. And then for all the support functions that you see on the right of the screen here, whether it's IT or legal or finance or recruiting or operations, you actually also have a lot of use cases. So eventually, if you think about building a new financial services out of machine learning, there could be just, even for quite a small offering, like just hundreds of models being produced. And that's what we call like pervasive machine learning, where every decision made by the business, whether it's a decision internally for compliance or a decision about the customer or about an offer that they would use, could potentially be based on data. And then it doesn't necessarily prevent human intervention. It's important to have in some parts of the process intervention from humans, but you can make the process more optimized based on what you know. Hundreds of models that need to be built and maintained. Without automation, this is really hard to do. We have some customers leveraging our automation just to actually be able to get there, because they don't have necessarily like the resources to actually maintain those systems or build them. And with a team of 10 data scientists, if you highly leverage automation, you can potentially have all of those models in production, being like refreshed and monitored automatically, and that's what we call a model factory. And some of our most data-driven customers, like Airbnb or others, would actually build those machine learning systems by making automation as a central part of their like kind of central component within their ecosystem. So DataRobot, just a quick word about our company. So we have a booth over there. If you want to see a demo, you can come. We have around 500 employees now. We were founded in 2012. We have got a lot of funding, 225 million. 100 million actually was raised around a month ago. We have a lot of top-ranked data scientists, and our customers leverage our cloud platform or our enterprise platform to build millions and millions of models. So we're really focused on making machine learning more accessible, more streamlined, and basically much faster. So probably with pervasive machine learning, my grandmother would have been, would have received offers after her death that are much more adapted to her. Probably, who knows? Thank you.